From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased. Joining me, Jack Skeels, CEO of Agency Agile. And maybe you would guess from the company name more or less what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about being agile, but this time, from a different perspective. As the audience knows, I don't like to take much of the light of my guests. This is why I would leave it to you, Jack. Just, tell us a bit more about you, your journey, and what you're currently up to, and then we're going to start the discussion from there. So the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And this is my homeland audience, if you will, from the perspective of I came up in technology originally they called it programmer back then.
Yeah.
Programming and project and program management and the like, and built a technology consultancy in the 1990s. And we won Inc. 500 awards and all that kind of thing. But I dropped into grad school after that to see how we did it, and then eventually ended up at Rand Corporation, the think tank in Santa Monica, California. And my job was to study how knowledge worker organizations work, and I became a researcher and analyst on that topic. A few years later, I ended up working at a complex project-driven organization, commonly known as an agency, a marketing and consulting agency. And I noticed that people didn't really know how to run these organizations well. And that began a journey, basically a 20-year or so journey now, that resulted in Agency Agile, where we worked with almost 200 organizations, helping them run better, faster, and happier. And more recently, in the last year or so, my book, Unmanaged, which talks about some of the key principles that go into how you do something like that. And here I am. And now we're in the age of AI. And it turns out, by the way, a lot of the principles that we teach are things that you need to do to make AI work for teams.
Absolutely. And thank you again for being here with me today. It's an honor to have you, Jack, with me on the podcast. So it's good that you explained to me, the turning point, but I'm curious about why these, and I know like you describe it as, some dysfunctions, right? Why that happen? Why do you think clients face these challenges, which you like to call hidden dysfunctions?
That's very good. Yeah.
Why no one noticed them actually?
Yeah. I mean, so people think of managing, and a lot of our idea of managing is sort of historically driven around military concepts, command and control, hierarchy. The idea of leadership as being telling people where to go, that kind of thing. And some of those techniques did work well in some situations. They weren't even the best, and I go into this in the book in great detail. In the Industrial Revolution, and by the way, the idea of managing has only been around for about 140 years. The word used to mean to take care of animals, like manger and manually dealing with animals, livestock, and that kind of thing. And so it has sort of a strange history to it. But our idea of managing was quite flawed, and though it worked well when we had factories and things like that and unskilled workers, today's workers are so incredibly intelligent, and the idea of what does the worker really need from a manager is a cornerstone question every manager should be thinking about. Now, the answer to this is workers need a lot less than you think they need from managers, and they need some different things from managers. And when you get that right, teams' productivities go through the roof. we see boosts, 50% boosts in productivity, um, dramatic reductions in rework, all that kind of thing. So a different way of managing is needed. And part of it is that the work, to answer your question, maybe, sorry, becoming a little bit circuitous here, to answer your question more head on, is the workplace today is so different than it was 100 years ago and even 50 years ago. But with such skilled knowledge workers, what we really want to be doing is unleashing them, okay, enabling them to use their minds and do great work, rather than sort of corralling them or bringing them in and constraining them. And that was the idea behind Agile. And I took some of those ideas, but we've added a lot more stuff. And the idea is, at the end of the day, we basically unleash workers to their full potential, and that unleashing, it unlocks a lot of business value, profits, happiness, all that kind of thing.
Like, you walked us through a lot of things here, Jack, right? So one thing which you mentioned, and this is something I didn't prepare to ask about. You mentioned about, like, we're using something which is kind of has been with us for a long time, and now the time changed, and you mentioned AI. Why do like, why some of the management concepts in general are sticky? Like, why we don't change them faster? And I know, at least from reading history, and I like read history about different topics, that it seems that this happened multiple times during, since, let's say, the beginning of the industrial age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it used to take like 50 years, sometimes 100 years, until a change happens. What's the main reason for this? Is it like because we refuse change, we don't like change, or is it because management, it's something different, it's a different beast that we need to deal with?
No one's ever asked the question that way. I think that's phenomenally asked. Um, so there are a couple pieces to it. One is, we don't actually study and teach managing. Okay. I have an MBA. Okay. I can tell you, and in fact, one of the great researchers on the topic, a guy named Henry Mintzberg, wrote a whole book, um, which basically said managers, not MBAs, I think was the title. And he pointed out that the modern MBA program doesn't teach how to manage people, how to be a great manager. It's called Masters in Business Administration. It teaches you to be an administrator, which is a very different thing than actually being a great manager. So partly we have an education system problem, right? The other thing is that there are two other things. One is, I think, and you sort of hinted at it, it's a good thing, by the way, as humans, we tend to repeat ourselves, right? If we see something working, we mimic that, we copy it. But the other thing is that the rise of what we call the meritocracy, right? This is the idea that if
Mhm.
I work really hard, I get a promotion, and that gives me a title, and that title is a manager title, and that means I have people that I tell them what to do, and this idea of a hierarchy gets built around the idea of the better people are higher in the hierarchy, and all kinds of sort of somewhat toxic things that actually make that what we call hierarchical behavior, which is not all that good a behavior, that makes it much more prevalent. It reinforces the model. When I get to be a manager, then I get to tell people what to do. And so all of our models are messed up, and there's this resilient structure called the meritocracy or the hierarchy that it seems to resonate for us a little bit, right? Maybe more than it should, right? But it is outdated for sure.
It is outdated. Yeah, this is the word. Yeah, and we saw it, not only in management, in multiple, I would say, domains also as well.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so from your experience, are there like any kind of warning signs that that will give us that, okay, we have this over layered thing that is coming, we started to go wrong direction, so we should get this awakening call that something have to be done?
Yeah. So one of the other things is we don't measure as managers, right? And there are two problems, and this is a fairly complex topic, and I'm going to do my best in a short window here. One is that our modern organizations are what we call multi-project organizations. That is, any given person, a worker, a maker who does something, is usually allocated to multiple projects, which means they have multiple managers as well and multiple other people that they need to interact with. And the challenge in this environment is that that's a lot of managing, a lot of managers, a lot of distractions, a lot of interruptions, that kind of thing. And in those environments, there are a couple things you can see. The first thing I noticed, this is 15 years ago, is when the more multi-project, multi-allocated your workplace is, okay, the more managers you have. And the ratio between managers and workers can actually get quite severe. I'm working with a 45 person agency development shop, actually, a development shop that has I think we counted 18 managers out of 45 people. So 18 managers and 27 workers. Okay. And that's one manager. What's that come out to? It's a 2-to-3 ratio. Okay. Two managers for every three people that are actually doing work. And that's crazy. It's a crazy number, but it's a result of how we overcompensate for the complexity of a multi-project organization by over managing. And that's why my book, but to give a plug to that, Unmanaged, is the idea, what if we manage less in this environment? And so that's the real opportunity. And it turns out you can, if you're going to do that, you need to measure. And to the real two measures that we use is, one is we ask people, how productive are you during the day? How many hours of truly productive time do you get during the day? And the thing we find is most multi-project, multi-allocated organizations, people trying to do work get 3 to 4 hours of productive time a day. And that's a tragedy, you know. And it turns out you're not going to get 8 because there are meetings and there's stuff that happens. But if you can go from, like we do with a lot of clients, from 3.5 hours to 5 hours, that's a huge percentage increase in the number of hours that are available and the like. And you can literally boost productivity of a team and individuals by 20, 30, 40%. Another thing that happens with all this complex environment is people don't understand the work. People get poorly briefed or they forget. And that's a whole other thing that you can actually deal with. If people understand the work better, they produce better work and we get better results.
Great insights again, Jack. So now let's talk about when you come in, right? So when you step in, what are like the first thing that you do usually?
Well, I think you alluded to this earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't follow up well on it. Even in my brain after all these years, it's a very complex topic. So I apologize for that. And your questions are great. The the managers, let me start that over again. Managers don't understand the situation. Okay. That is, I'll give you a real quick example of this. Is sort of like, I can look at time cards, okay? And I'm going to see everybody's fully utilized, right? Now, they're fully utilized. They're going to a lot of meetings and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that they're productive, right? And so what we want to do is actually help managers understand what's really happening. And that's why we use these measures, like how many productive hours are workers getting in the day. We don't ask managers how productive people are. What managers will say, by the way, they'll say, boy, they sure could be more productive. If you talk to workers, why aren't you productive? And they're like, well, because we're on the meetings. I'm constantly getting interrupted, both of which are managerial functions, right? So what we want to do is actually restore. The first thing we do, we call it the Leadership Foundation Workshop. We teach managers how to really look at the organization from a performance perspective, right?
Hmm.
And the job of the manager is to actually help the team go faster, not to manage a lot, but help the team go faster.
Get the team go faster. Now, what about the friction that would happen? Because again, the same topic that I mentioned. So people they don't like changes, as I was saying, right, Jack? So um, how much of I would say I'm not sure if risk management is the right word here, but like putting into consideration that these changes will face some pushbacks. Another scenario, which from I have watched a lot of companies happen, especially when they move from being like this nimble, small company to becoming a more like mature, like large company, is the amount of bureaucracy that get gets in.
Yeah.
um, right? And of course, like it's just like a coincidence. I was speaking with someone yesterday or today before yesterday. He was telling me, look, like we have perfect culture in our place, in our company. Uh, really, people are nice, but like you go talk to the one who's responsible, the decision maker. It says, like we found it like this way. Nothing can be done. Or like, yeah, go talk to someone else. Once everyone agrees, I will come and agree. So these scenarios like are frictions usually. I know like I don't like the word like magic wand or a secret sauce or something like this, but how to deal with such situations also, Jack?
Well, I think there are two pieces to what you're getting at. One is, in fact, we only work with CEOs and their organizations if the CEO believes in the idea of change and empowering people, right? Because if the CEO doesn't believe in that, all of that trickles down into the rest of the organization, and you just can't change it, right? Having a culture of ask and understand and measure requires patience and a dedication to trying to do better for everyone, right? And if the CEO is not organized that way, then no one else will be, right? Um, and part of the process also is, like I said, we do this very inexpensive, quick workshop where we come in and
Mm-hmm.
get everyone to understand. Wow, here are all these ways we could be faster and more productive, and in fact, having makers be faster and more productive isn't about making them work harder. It's about unleashing them and letting them be productive and get the work done during the day. People don't realize, by the way, the hardest job in any one of these organizations is to be one of the people doing the work, because you come in during the day, all you want to do is just get your work done, right? And feel good about it and feel like you did a great job. And the organization itself is sort of organized around interfering with that, keeping you from being as fully productive as you could, right? So I think we do a lot around the awareness when we come in, helping people understand where the organization could go to, what it is that we could fix, and that's the beginning of a whole change cycle that we use for transformation.
Great. Now, have you seen any situations where, the changes started, in a very positive way, right? But after a while, it gets stuck in the middle. So it gets stalled, right? So how have you seen, what are like some of the things you advise your clients to do to make sure that we don't have, and usually we saw this in projects, and you've worked in that space also, Jack. So at the beginning of the project, everyone is excited, yeah, let's do this, we need to start kick things off. First couple of weeks, even months, everything working perfectly, and then we reach a stage where I don't know, is it the energy that went down, is it like again the processes that stopped us? uh, what are the reasons for such things to happen, and how you advise people to keep this, you call it a sticky change, right? We don't want this to be a like one time thing.
Yeah, look, it happens in projects and it happens in transformations, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about the project example first, though, which is there tends to be, we are incredibly optimistic human beings, right? And optimistic creatures in that way. And we tend to think, um, despite what's happened in the past, this time it will be better, right? And if you map out, as I have with hundreds and hundreds of projects over the years, you can see this cycle where we start with this, I call it the plateau of optimism. Okay, everyone's really happy, exactly like you said, everyone's happy and excited. And what it usually is that we don't actually understand how hard this project is going to be. And that's actually a very nice moment because we're ignorant in that way, right?
Right.
And as we get into the project and learn how hard it is, learn more about the scope, we get better scope. We learn that we didn't know these things, and it's harder than it is, harder than it seemed. We drop into this thing I call the chasm of despair, right? It's the valley of despair when we realize, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to do this? This is a much harder project, et cetera. And the question is whether you've got what it takes to climb that mountain, to get out of that chasm, out of that valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very natural human cycle. It happens with a lot of things. The It happens, and it takes a commitment to doing a couple of things. One is you need to be thinking about how you want to do things from the very start. And this includes good scoping. We teach great scoping techniques, how to do a great kickoff, how to get people aligned on things. And likewise, when you're doing transformation, you get everyone aligned on what the problems are that we're going to fix, and also how hard it is going to be to fix those problems. And sort of getting everyone connected that way actually it makes the journey go a lot better, and it removes some of the optimism from the project for sure. Okay, but it adds realism, which is very, very welcome by the end of the project.
Um, like this is kind of opened my eyes on something else. I'm hoping also for the audience that will do the same, because you mentioned crossing the chasm, right? So uh, because it's the same life cycle of like how we talk about when a new startup, they try to find their product market fit, and they have the early adopters, and then they have to cross the chasm so they go to the majority. So I think same when you mentioned this, like immediately it's like ha- doing transformation or even a project, in my opinion, it's run the same way as you run a startup, and then you need to make sure that you cross the chasm so you don't get stagnant there, and maybe you go to failure. So this has made a lot of sense to me. Now,
Yeah, I'm
you
going to
want to
jump
say
in real
something?
quick. So the
Yeah, please.
equivalent in the Clayton Christensen and all that kind of chasm model is really the amount of, I believe, and a lot of the research shows this, the amount of research you do on the broader market
Mm-hmm.
beforehand. Okay, so this idea of completely lean startup, we will just
Right.
find someone who buys it and that kind of thing, has a fatal flaw, which is you still don't know how hard the big market is, right?
Right.
And if it's even there. And so that's the equivalent of the project scope thing, which is finding a bunch of early adopters in a what will never be a big market is not a big win. It's a recipe for
True.
just spinning. And yeah, so go ahead, sorry about that.
No, no, no. I'm happy. I'm happy you mentioned this also, Jack. Now, when you did the introduction, and we start to talk, you mentioned AI, right? So, and everyone talks now about the big topic, which is future of work. So, from what you are noticing now and working with a lot of clients, how the AI is changing the whole landscape of management, and uh, the way that companies should be organized. Uh, I don't want to make it a loaded questions, but because I'm hearing sometimes we're heading toward like more agile, quote unquote, organizations, maybe with less people, so we'll not have this problem. I hear some other experts saying, no, actually now it's like more challenging, because not only the AI part, and now we're talking about, something that comes into the mix, like hybrid working, and people
Mhm.
who can be sitting anywhere. Culture might become like a little bit a challenge, because people are not seeing each other's on daily basis. We're not coming to the office. What are you seeing? What are the trends there, Jack? How things are moving?
So I mean, it's a huge topic. Okay, we could spend hours on this. I am going to refer your listeners to a piece of research done in 2023. You can go onto Google Scholar, scholar.google.com,
Yes.
and it's called GPTs are GPTs. And the authors talk about the workforce implications to GPTs. Okay, and the idea of the paper is that GPTs are general purpose technologies, and that phrase is a special word in the world of industrial economics. And a general purpose technology is something like electricity or the internet, right? In other words, you can't say, what's electricity going to do for jobs, right? Okay. You can't, because it's a general purpose technology, and it really depends on the job what electricity will do for it, right? And the same thing is true for AI. So anyone who gives you broad prognostications is just making shit up to some degree, right? Okay. Now, I can tell you, and you did the intro on Agile, and there are a lot of people talking about Agile and AI, and in a sense, it's justified. I mean, all of our work that we do is sort of Agile inspired, but advanced beyond the basic Agile stuff and the like. And we recently did a very, very cool, and it's not even a pilot because it's real. It's a production, it's a real live project with a big agency and their big automotive client and the like. And there were some very interesting lessons out of it. And the idea was this, and they had a great toolkit, a great AI toolkit and the like. And the whole agency had been using the toolkit, but they hadn't been really getting much for results, as is the case for a lot of people. They were enjoying using the tool, but no big business impact. And it turns out, and what we did is we set up a pod, and we gave that pod the assignment. And this is the people who were going to do the work, but we trained them in the tools. We gave them the assignment and the help in re-engineering the way they were going to work with the client. And we got the client on board with it as well. And together, the team and the client re-engineered how to work faster and better and all that kind of thing. And the results were quite miraculous. And as an example, and this was just their first 6 months of the work, they cut the span time for their typical project in half. Okay. And a lot of the span time was reviews and comments and revisions and all that kind of thing. So they cut the span time in half, and they cut the labor by 35%. Okay. So still a lot of labor in there, but much more efficient labor. And the client changed, the way the client operates changed as well. And so I think this underscores a couple of important ideas. One is, it will restructure how individuals do work, and certainly even how a team works together and what they work on. But it'll also restructure the value chain if you do it right. Okay. And this is where the AI thing comes in, because if we had just, and the rest of the agency, this is an A/B test. It's kind of a cool test. The rest of the agency was just letting their teams work with their clients and use the tool if they want to, not getting any big results. Okay. We got amazing results because we focused the team on, how do you implement AI? How do you make your process better? We said, forget the process you have, you come up with a new process. And that enabled AI. And there's a lot of research that supports this. It is the undoing of organizational structures that enables AI to have big impacts. Okay. Is that if you don't undo your organizational structures and process, then those structures and process constrain AI. Okay. AI can only optimize within that. And what you really want to do is release it all. Hey, where do we put it? Let's put electricity everywhere we can. What do that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Um, it totally makes sense. And this is very similar to, when people started to talk about digital transformation and, shifting to cloud,
yeah.
and they start to say, hey, like, we didn't see benefits. Yeah, of course you didn't see benefits, because what you are doing wrong, on not wrong, I mean, in unoptimized way, on pen and paper, you just took it and digitized it in the same way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
of course,
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And the same thing with AI, because people, and this is something, maybe I'm being philosophical a little bit. People looks for shortcuts and for magic wands. I'm repeating myself, because they think, this AI will solve us. I'm not sure if you have seen this, like, funny kind of meme or sketch, where they put, like, every CEO is asking for AI. When do you want it? Now? Yeah, right. So it's like everyone want to be on the AI, but actually they don't know that they need to do some work before bringing the AI. Now, still talking about
I think that
AI. Yeah,
I think there's a reason for that, which is that in general, technological, and that's why the GPTs paper I think is really cool.
right.
In general, technologies come as individual tools, right? So, hey, we've got a new programming language, or we've got a new programming platform. How do we implement that platform to replace the platform we had before is actually a fairly straightforward kind of thing to do, right? But it's in general purpose technology, like, wow, we have electricity all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just, what are you replacing? And so if you treat it like a little tool, all you'll get is little tool changes to it. Yeah.
I know, like, it's kind of fictional question and maybe science fiction question, but are you seeing AI really being placed in managerial positions, take decisions?
Yeah, I think, I've been publishing a little bit of stuff on this. I have more to come. I think there's a trust problem with AI. Okay, and
Mm,
people talk about this a lot. If you look me up on LinkedIn, you can find. I put together an AI trust matrix,
mm,
or trust gradient. There are some things that AI can provide quality, highly trustable input on, and there are a lot of things it can't, right? And the problem is the AI can't. It doesn't do a good job of telling you where it is on that gradient, right? And I think that, a lot of people have written on this, but the idea of judgment, quality assessment, things like that are hopefully managerial functions, right?
yeah.
Those things are not easily replaced by AI right now. The funny thing is that AI can make great observations. Like, AI can watch a manager in action and critique a manager in terms of, here's some skills you need to get better at, and your conversation, like, Jack, you're talking too much, that kind of thing. They can absolutely do that observational stuff. But the intuiting of what it really means and how I might coach Jack, that's that's really more of a human thing, that humans can outperform AIs in that all day long. AIs outperform humans in the observation task, for example.
Yeah, and automation and these kinds of tasks also as well. I was just checking, so I don't you know replace any word with a wrong word. So on the trust, and I think many people maybe they have seen this. There was a training manual from IBM dated back 1979 saying a computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer must never make a management decision.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. I'd love for
yeah,
you to send that to me. That's great. I love it. That's
yeah, I
fantastic.
saw it multiple times, like and now because you mentioned this about the trust, uh, yeah, because like even myself coming from technology perspective, and I heard things I'm not sure about it here and there, like how these LLMs are programmed, how they are trained to behave, uh, and I spoke with some really experts in this domain. They told me a little bit scary, not scary. I would say like things that I should and everyone should be worried about. I don't know if manipulation is the right word
It
here, but
absolutely is the right word. Yeah, no, no,
yeah,
no. I'm
I'm a little bit. I don't like to be harsh, right? So, but yeah, it's manipulation. So
yeah.
actually, and this is a fact. This is why everyone talks about ethical AI. Every single company that developed an LLM, all of them without any exclusion, uh, they can manipulate the way the chatbot can reply to you.
Well, in fact, yeah. So let me jump in on this. I find
Please.
this fascinating area. In fact, I'm doing some work with my old alma mater, Rand Corporation, around this recently. So if you take, and I forget the exact numbers, but if the actual LLM model is not all that big, okay. The
Mhm.
actual what's called the token vector space is, I think, 5 gigabytes or something like that, which is a frighteningly small number given that it came from like 30 or 90
Yeah.
terabytes worth of information, right? There's not a lot of knowledge in it. What there is inside of that token vector space, it's the LLM, the large language model, is there are relationships between words. Okay. And that can be very valuable if the relationships between those words are part of a factual truth. It can pull it out like, just like magic, right? And it pulls out those tokens, but then it's got to turn it into something we can understand. So 95% of all the data that a GPT uses, okay, 95% is what's called the transformer layer, which takes the output of the vector space math and converts it to English that we understand. Okay. So that is, it takes these word token combinations and it figures out how to tell it to us in the most persuasive way. Now, if in fact the tokens that it got out of the LLM are really weak, like they don't tell a truth, they tell an ambiguity, they tell whatever, it will still make it sound like a convincing truth. Okay. And this is a scary thing. The GPTs are designed to be highly persuasive. And even if it doesn't know something, it will try to persuade you and give you the best. And this is the deceptive thing about GPTs is the GPT doesn't measure itself by whether it's correct. It measures itself by whether it gives you an answer that you like. Okay. And if I said there's a person, Mehmet, if I said, do you have a friend who answers you not truthfully, but in ways that you love hearing, even though it's not the truth, what kind of person is that? Okay. I mean, I think of that as a sociopath, right? That's sociopathic. That right. And I'm going to tell you whatever I need to tell you to make you happy, regardless of whether it's the truth.
Yeah, it's scary. It is scary, and this is why the more I go deep in this, I also started to dislike the word intelligence in this
Oh yeah,
because
it's not intelligence in it. Yeah.
it's not intelligence. It's just it's a computer software. It's a piece of code. Yeah, I'm not saying it's simple. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like underestimating the amount and of time and money and that developers have put to train these models. But it's not intelligence. It's like driven. And I was having like also another discussion about how we were like hooked for these tools and we are able to use them. So it's absolutely, it's we need. I know we need hours to talk about this, Jack. Jack, tell me a little bit about the book. Like, what are like the major things you discuss there? Like, what people can distill from the book. So just let us give them a some teaser so they can go and check it out.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Well, the book was written largely. I'm just going to say a little bit about the beginning journey, and then I'll come back to your question. I had a moment back almost 20 years ago now where I'd been laid off during the global economic downturn, but my manager said I hadn't been a very good manager. I was running a 105 person Los Angeles office of a big consultancy. And I thought, wasn't a good manager. You got to be kidding. I'm like, I'm MBA and I studied management sciences at Rand Corporation and blah, blah, blah. And they started to write the book and I did all the research and I realized, well, I didn't actually know how to be a good manager. So I went out and did it. And that was the genesis of the company that I have now, Agency Agile. But the book essentially is that whole story. In fact, it starts with that story. And the story of me trying the techniques out that I'd done the research on and them succeeding and saving a big project. Basically, there are a bunch of principles that you as a manager need to understand. And we teach these in our transformation trainings projects we do with our clients. But you can use it as a book to sort of guide some of your decision making as a manager and certainly to raise your awareness as a manager. Among the many things we talk about are how important it is to have people understand the why. We have a model called why, what, go, grow. And having people understand the why dramatically improves project success rates. Okay? And then the what, which is the scope, there's a whole set of principles around that, and then the go, the execution, and then how to grow people. So that's a very wide-ranging book, 380 pages. We won 5 awards for it. I have no idea why. I can't believe anybody has ever read it because I after having worked on it for a year and a half, I can't even read it. But people say nice things about it, and I think it's generally useful for a manager.
Yeah, definitely. Jack, like if we want to, and this is part of the thing that I try to do it with my guests. We have a new generation coming up now, and they're ready to take on life. So if you want to give them a piece of advice to do this whole organization management in a proper way from day one, and they avoid maybe the mistakes that us, but I mean, not all of us, but I mean, the previous generation have done. What do you advise them to do? Like, how do you push the younger generation to be the driver for the positive change?
I think certainly if they are starting their own organization, it's a lot easier than to be the internal
Right.
change agent as a new hire or something like that. I I've learned a lot from. I mean, look, I've worked with probably 300 executives over the years, and I learn a lot from them. And one of them, very successful guy, Ben Kirchner, had an agency called Elite SEM, and Ben had built this amazing like it was like 100 people, and it had 8 managers or something like that, right? And I was like, wow, how did you do that, Ben? What was the secret? He hired me after he'd done that. I mean, and I said, how did you get there? He said, you know what? I worked in a traditional setting for a while and I hated it. And when I started my company, I said, what I'm going to do is every time there's a decision I need to make, I will think about what they would have done in my old company. And I'm going to do the opposite. And basically, and this has come up as a theme multiple times with clients of mine over the years, is this idea really think different. Go back to the old Apple theme,
Yes.
do the opposite and see what happens. Okay. Because the orthodoxy is not a powerful orthodoxy. It's a very fragile one. And you can go very far, like he did, just saying, maybe we don't need to do that. Okay. Or what if we did the opposite? So and think and ask questions is, I guess, my broader answer.
Uh, if you allow me to add one thing, we know anyone that comes today to me and they ask me like, not necessarily they want to start a company about anything. Maybe they are still, maybe they want to go to a normal career. The first thing I tell them to do, don't be shy of asking why anything is done the way it's done today,
Absolutely. Yep.
and don't be shy to ask, can it be done better, right? So if you have this mindset, I because like maybe I was like this, yeah, you would be a little bit hated. I would say. Just joking. Yeah, like people don't like change. No one likes change. So you would be questioned, like they will consider you the weirdo guy, over there. But what I'm happy about and I'm optimistic about, I see the newer generation. I know, like from my own daughter, for example, they question a lot, and they ask like, why it's done this way? Can we have done it in a different way? And exactly the different thing you mentioned, Jack, is 100% relevant to the whole thing we were discussing today.
Well,
Uh,
let me throw
yeah, please,
something in real quick. So,
please.
this is in the book, a more detailed version of the story. But at Rand Corporation, I had an opportunity to have some of the top researchers there explain to me, and they did it through a very fun little lesson. If you read the whole vignette in the book, but basically, it came down to this: is I the they look for people who ask questions. So this is a top flight think tank in the world. And the only people they hire are not people who know things, but people who ask things.
Mm,
And they explained it as this: having the answers is the end of all learning. Okay. We don't hire people who aren't learning. Okay. Having the questions, it means that you're still learning, you're still growing. And especially the question, like you said, is this the right way? Or if it's not the right way, what could be the right way? Those questions are where you grow as a human being and where we move forward as human beings. So your comment is spot on. I think it's a very a noble way to live is to actually question everything. And it's not negative. It certainly is weird, right? But it's not negative, very positive. You'll live a very good life if you do that, by the way.
yeah, and you will not only be benefiting yourself, to your point, it's noble thing, because you might be benefiting a bunch of people, maybe a whole generation, by questioning
Yep.
what I like to call it the status quo, right? So absolutely. As we are coming to the end, Jack, where people can get in touch, and if they want to leverage your knowledge and maybe work with you, so where they can find out more.
I think the best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn, Jack
Mhm.
Skeels. There's only one, so it should be pretty easy to find. We're actually rebranding the company shortly, and that'll be obvious on there. So better to use me as an anchor that way. The book you can find on Amazon. We have it other places, but I can tell you empirically, nobody buys my book anywhere other than Amazon. I don't know why. I don't think anybody buys books elsewhere these days. But it's on Amazon, 5 stars and the like. If you're curious, and I think the ebook is like especially cheap right now. So
Great. So for sure, yeah, they don't need to go and search. So everything, all the links will be in the show notes of anyone is listening on, your favorite podcasting app. You'll find them there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find that also as well. Well, Jack, really, I appreciate very much, the time you gave us today.
I feel like we could go for another 2 hours.
Absolutely. No, I feel like we need to do part 2, part 3, maybe.
Absolutely.
Later.
Let me know. I'd love to.
Yeah.
You ask wonderful questions, and you have a great mind, which is,
thank you.
A benefit for your audience, I'm sure. I'm sure that's
Thank
why they love your show so much.
Thank you very much, Jack. And this is how I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you just discovered this podcast, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, give me a small favor. As you're seeing and listening, we're trying to do an impact. So subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. Maybe someone will benefit out of it. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, thank you for the support. Thank you for making the show trending on the Apple Podcast in multiple countries in the entrepreneurship category. This cannot happen without you. And again, I'm very happy that everyone encouraged, all the effort that I'm doing. And as you know, my book also is now out on Amazon. It came out on 10th of September. So you can get it. Thank you, Jack. So you can get it from Amazon. And like Jack, I don't think someone buys any book other than Amazon. So it's the only place where you can find it. Nowhere to next. And it's the lessons that I learned from my personal experience and talking to people like Jack on the podcast. And until we meet next time, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.